Welcome back to my channel. My name is Prachi Sharma and today's session is based upon all important questions of electrolysis. A lot of students did reach out to me on Telegram. So if you have not been connected on Telegram yet, please go ahead and subscribe to that channel as well, because I do keep sending some sample papers there, and for correction you can email them back to me on psclassesicsc@gmail.com. So without wasting any time here, let's get started with today's session. Alright students, so I hope the screen is clearly visible to you. Now as we go along with these questions, I won't be writing all the answers here. It will be more like discussing with you what the answers are, because that helps me keep the video short and crisp for you, and you don't waste a lot of time. If there is anything in particular in these questions that you get stuck in, or you're not able to understand, you can drop a message in the comment section or on the Telegram, or you can also email me. So let's get started with the first question. So the first question say, some word or words are missing in the following statement. You are required to rewrite the statement in the correct form using the appropriate word or words. The first is, cations migrate during electrolysis. So that is correct. Of course, cations do migrate, but this is not complete sentence. This is an incomplete one. So you'll have to add up something here. So that would be, cations migrate to the cathode. So let me just write that. So cations migrate to the cathode during electrolysis. So you can just add up right here. Then let's move ahead. The next is, identify the weak electrolyte from the following. So the first one is sodium chloride solution. So of course we do know that sodium chloride is a salt solution and it gives you a lot of iron. So it's a strong electrolyte. It's not a weak one. Then same thing is with HCl and sulfuric acid. All of them gives you a lot of ions because they dissociate when water is dissolved, water is mixed with them. The last one is aqueous acetic acid. So as we do understand that acetic acid is a weak acid, because when it dissociates in water along with ions, you also get molecules. So the answer for this particular question will be aqueous acetic acid. Let's move to the next one. The next is match the following. So the first is acid, salt, double salt, ammonium hydroxide solution, dilute HCl and carbon tetrachloride. So let's start with the first one, acid, salt. I think the question is visible now. Okay, let's start with the first one, the acid salt. So for acid salt, you have to always remember that it will have a hydrogen in between. So if you just directly take that understanding and you look at column B answers, so you have ferrous ammonium contains only iron, sodium hydrogen sulfate. So sodium hydrogen sulfate is your prospective answer. The next is contains only molecules, contains ions and molecules. So your answer for acid salt becomes C. So this is 1. The next one is a double salt. So for double salt, your answer would be ferrous ammonium. So let me just write 2 here. The third is ammonium hydroxide solution. So ammonium hydroxide solution will contain ions as well as molecules. So your answer will be E. E is right here. So you'll write 3 over here. Contains ions as well as molecules. Then dilute HCl will contain only ions. So that should be B. So I'll write that here. Then the next is carbon tetrachloride. So that will contain molecules. So this is right here, right in front of it. So these are your answers for this particular question. Let's move ahead to the next one. So the next question is, give reasons for the following. An aqueous solution of sodium chloride conducts electricity. So what will be your answer for this one? So when you have aqueous solution of sodium chloride, so sodium chloride is an ionic compound. So when we mix water in it, it dissociates into respective ions, and these ions help in transmission of electricity and it increases the conductivity of the solution. So let's see what we can write here. We'll write sodium chloride is an ionic compound which dissociates completely and gives you ions, and these ions help in conduction of electricity. So let's move to the next one. State one appropriate one observation. Okay, this should be 1. State one appropriate observation for the following. Electricity is passed through molten lead bromide. So when we pass it through molten lead bromide, you get a silver deposit. So we'll have to write that. So you'll get silver deposit. And where do you get that? It appears at cathode, and you get a reddish brown vapors will appear at anode. So that's your answer. This is your observation when electricity is passed through molten lead bromide. Now, next is choose the most appropriate answer from the following option. Which of these will act as a non-electrolyte? So, if you look at your options, liquid carbon tetrachloride, acetic acid, sodium hydroxide aqueous solution acid, and potassium chloride aqueous solution. So if you look at potassium chloride aqueous solution will contain ions. This will contain ions. Acetic acid will contain ions as well as molecules. So they are asking non-electrolyte. That means no ions at all. So that answer will be liquid carbon tetrachloride, and that is your answer. Now let's move to the next one. Copper sulfate solution is electrolyzed using copper electrodes. I think the question should be visible now. Copper sulfate solution is electrolyzed using copper electrodes. Study the diagram given below. So this is your diagram. Right. So what you have to answer? You have to write which electrode to your left or right is known as the oxidizing electrode and why. So if you look at this, so one of them is connected to the positive terminal of the battery and the other one is connected to the negative terminal. So the one that is connected to positive terminal will be your anode, because an anode is the one that gets oxidized during this process. So we are going to mark that. So your answer will be anode, and you'll also mention left. And this is because it loses electrons. So it loses electrons, therefore gets oxidized. Okay. Then the next is write the equation representing the reaction that occurs. So in this process, the reaction that will occur. So if you can see, you have copper sulfate solution marked as the liquid of it. So if you mark that and write the equation for that, so your equation will be copper minus 2 electrons, which will give you copper ion. Okay. This will go at the anode. Now the next is, this is happening at the anode, I'm sorry. The next is state two appropriate observations for the above electrolysis reaction. So the two appropriate observations in this case will be that as your anode keeps giving away electrons and copper keeps coming out as an ion, so what will happen? The thickness of your copper, that is your anode, will start decreasing, and the size or the thickness of your cathode will start increasing because copper will start getting deposited at that position, and the entire color of copper sulfate is blue in color, and eventually this blue color will start fading away. So these are your three major observations. Depending on what the question is asking, you can mention that. They are asking two appropriate observations. So for two observation, you can give one for cathode, one for anode, and that is sufficient. So you can say size of anode decreases and size of cathode increases. So these observations are sufficient. Let's move to the next one. Select the correct answer from the list of the items in the brackets. So the first is an aqueous electrolyte consists of the ions mentioned in the list. The ion which could be discharged most readily during electrolysis. So this list is also given in the book, that is your priority range, that which one will get discharged first. So if you look at this list, that is your iron 2 plus, copper 2 plus, lead and hydrogen, copper will get discharged first. The next is the metallic electrode which does not take part in an electrolytic reaction. So the electrode that does not take part in a reaction is platinum. So that will be platinum. The next is the ion which is discharged at the anode during electrolysis of copper sulfate solution. So we just did that the one discharged at the anode is copper. So that will be copper 2 plus. The next one is when dilute sodium chloride is electrolyzed using graphite electrodes, the cation is discharged at the cathode most readily. So which of these is most readily discharged at the cathode? So that will be H plus. Okay, that will be hydrogen. The next is during silver plating, of an article using potassium argentocyanide as an electrolyte, the anode material should be what? So when you have potassium argentocyanide, the material that you will be taking will be, you have copper, silver, platinum and iron. You will be taking Ag, that is silver. You will be taking silver in this case. The next question is, choose the correct answer from the options given below. When fused lead bromide is electrolyzed, we observe what? So the first one is given that you get silver gray deposit at anode. So no, we do not, and reddish brown deposit at cathode. No, that doesn't happen. The next is your silver gray deposit at cathode, reddish brown deposit at anode. Then silver gray deposit at cathode and reddish brown fumes at anode. So that is what you have to focus on. You get reddish brown vapors or fumes at anode, and you get silver gray deposit at cathode. So your answer is C. The next question is, choose the correct answer from the options given below. The electrolyte used for electroplating an article with silver is what? So the first is silver nitrate solution, silver cyanide solution, sodium argentocyanide solution, and nickel sulfate solution. So if you think from the previous one of the questions that we did, let me come on that question. So we did this question, potassium argentocyanide as an electrolyte, and you are using for silver plating, and that is the same question that you're doing electroplating. So which one should you use? So you will be using sodium argentocyanide. Okay. Now the next one is question number 11. Give one word for the following. Electrolytic deposition of a superior metal on a baser metal is electroplating. So the answer for this is electroplating. The next is, state your observation in the following cases. At the cathode, when acidified aqueous copper sulfate solution is electrolyzed with copper electrodes. So when this happens, copper sulfate, so this is the diagram question that we did. So in that case, what happens at cathode? So the size of the cathode increases. That is your observation. So size of cathode increases. The next is, which electrode, anode or cathode, is oxidizing electrode and why? So we discussed that anode is an oxidizing electrode because it loses electrons and oxidation takes place at this electrode. So oxidation takes place at anode. The next is, why the electrolysis of acidified water is considered to be an example of catalysis. This is because, so when we add acid to water, it speeds up the reaction, but when you take a look at the end of the reaction, the concentration or the amount of it stays the same. So what we can say that when we add acid to water, the speed of the reaction increases, that is there, but it does not take part in the reaction. So let me write that. When acid is added to water, it speeds up the reaction but doesn't take part in it. Therefore, it is known as an example of catalysis, because a catalyst is something that speeds up the reaction but does not take part in the reaction. The next is, differentiate between electrical conductivity of copper sulfate solution and copper metal. So when we talk about copper sulfate solution, so when we, right here, so when we talk about copper sulfate solution, so when you are flowing electricity, ions are, the electricity is passed through the movement of ions. Ions are moving here and there. And when we talk about copper metal, it is the electrons that help in the conduction of electricity. Then in the copper sulfate solution, you have a chemical change happening. It's a chemical level happening. And in copper metal, it's a physical change that happens. Okay. So I hope that is clear. You can write that answer yourself. If you have any doubts, you can definitely reach out to me. Let's move ahead to the next one. Choose the correct option from the following. The particles present in a strong electrolyte are. This is a very easy one. So you have either only molecules, mainly ions and molecules, and only atoms. We are talking about a strong electrolyte, so we are preferring that you have mainly ions present and you have a high conduction of electricity. So your answer should be B, that is mainly ions. Now the next is write equations for the reactions taking place at the two electrodes, mentioning clearly the name of the electrode during the electrolysis of. So the first case is acidified copper sulfate solution with copper electrodes. So in this case, you'll have to clearly write that you have cathode, then you write anode. So what will happen at cathode? You have Cu2 plus 2 electrons, and Cu gets deposited there. That's the reason the size of cathode increases. And at anode, your copper is losing electrons and getting converted into ions. So this is what you'll get. The next is molten lead bromide with inert electrodes. So at molten lead bromide, what you'll have is at cathode, you'll have Pb2 plus 2 electrons, and you'll get Pb. And at anode, what will happen? You'll have bromine, not lead. So because you have lead bromide, right? So you'll have bromine at anode. So let me mention the name. At anode, I will have 2Br minus 2 electrons, and that will give you 2Br, and 2Br combined together to give you bromine 2, Br2. So that is what's happening at bromine. The next question is name the product formed at the anode during the electrolysis of acidified water using platinum electrodes. So what do you get? Name the product formed at anode. So at anode you end up getting oxygen. The next question is name the metallic ion that should be present in the electrolyte where an article made of copper is to be electroplated with silver. So when you're electroplating something with silver, the main ion that should be present in the solution or the electrolyte should be silver. So my pencil stopped working. So that is silver. You can write that. Alright students, let's start from question number 19th. So we were on this question. So this question says give reason why in the electroplating of an article with silver, the electrolyte sodium argentocyanide solution is preferred over silver nitrate solution. So the answer for this is that when we talk about silver nitrate solution, it dissociates very fast. So when silver nitrate is dissociating very fast and you are trying an electroplating, so it does not give you a smooth finish because it is getting dissociated very fast. So we do not get a smooth finish on the article that you are trying to electroplate. Therefore, we prefer sodium argentocyanide, which is a complex compound, because it dissociates slowly. So the deposition on your electroplating article is very smooth. So that is the reason why we prefer sodium argentocyanide solution. Let's move to the next one. Although copper is a good conductor of electricity, it is a non-electrolyte. Give reason. The reason is that when we talk about solid copper metal, it does not contain free ions. Therefore, any material that does not contain free ions is a non-electrolyte, because when you talk about a solid material, for transmission of electricity, you need electrons. But when you talk about an electrolyte, for transmission of electricity, what do we need? We need ions. Okay, so we have absence of ions in copper, therefore it's a non-electrolyte. Let's move to the next one. During electrolysis of copper sulfate solution using platinum as cathode and carbon as anode, what do you observe at cathode and at the anode? So again, observation. So at cathode, we discussed already, the size increases of the electrode. What happens at anode? The size decreases of anode. Next is what change is noticed in the electrolyte. So as I've mentioned in the first or second question somewhere, that the electrolyte in this particular case is blue in color. So what change will you notice in the electrolyte? The blue color of the solution will slowly fade away. Okay. The third one, write the reactions at cathode and anode. Okay, I have already written that in one of the answers above, but I'll still write it for you. So at cathode, what will happen? You have copper 2 plus 2 electrons, and that will give you copper. And at anode, you'll have copper minus 2 electrons, that will give you copper 2 plus. So these are the reactions that will happen. Oh, sorry. In this case, at anode, you won't have copper happening at anode because you are using I'm sorry. Because if you look at the question again, during the electrolysis of copper sulfate, you are using platinum. So this is a different electrolysis reaction. So in this case, at anode, what would happen? At anode, you will have 4 OH negative ions minus 4 electrons, which will give you OH, 4 of OH, and then 4 of OH will combine to give you water plus oxygen, then C plus O2 will give you CO2. So this is what will happen at anode. Now let's move to the next one. I hope this makes sense to you first of all. So what is happening is your hydroxyl ions will end up getting dissociated. These hydroxyl ions will try and combine. So you have OH. So OHs, 4 of those OHs, when they get dissociated in the electrolyte, your 2 of them will convert into water molecules, and whatever extra oxygen you will have will combine to give you O2. And since you have carbon adds the anode, so carbon is also getting dissociated. So C plus the oxygen that you got from the above reaction will combine to give you CO2. So a gas will appear at that position. So you can see gas vapors. So that is carbon dioxide. Let's move to the next one. Select the correct answer from the choice A, B, C, D which are given. Write only the letter corresponding to the correct answer. So the first one is, a particular solution contains molecules and ions of the solute. So it is a acid base, strong base. So it is a salt solution. So when you have molecules and ions of the solute in a solution, that means it's a salt solution. The next question is, a compound which liberates reddish brown gas around the anode during the electrolysis in its molten state is what? So when you have molten state and you're talking about anode, it liberates a reddish brown gas. You're talking about lead bromide. You're talking about lead bromide. Let's move to the next one. During ionization, metals lose electrons. This change can be called what? So in this case, if you understand, when they lose electrons, this particular case is known as oxidation. Okay, students, so that particular case is oxidation. All right, my dear students, so this is it for today's session. We did about 22 important questions of electrolysis. If you need more questions from this particular chapter, I don't mind making another video for another, let's say, 22 questions for you. So make sure that you go through the entire video thoroughly. If you have any doubts or concerns, you are free to reach out to me on Telegram, on email ID, or even in the comment section below. So thank you so much. Stay tuned for more content that is gonna come up in the next couple of weeks. Prepare well for your board exams. Do not be scared. Everything is gonna be fine. Just focus on your hard work and it's gonna pay off. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day ahead.